Welcome to the show. I'm your host, James Stone. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge all of the positive feedback and response I've gotten to the first episode. It's truly encouraging and inspiring, so thank you. In today's episode, we continue the Pantheacon interviews, and our guests will discuss in depth our relationships with each other and with the secular mundane world and how we might improve them. So fill your drinking horn, sit back, and enjoy the Forbidden Frequency.
That's tough. Dealing with the outside world, I think, is the easy part, so I'm going to start there. I do interfaith work, as do people like Don Fruit and a number of other things. And we're actually becoming a lot more accepted. In fact, I have a university series that takes place in a Catholic church next week where I'm going to talk about who speaks for God. And nobody's blinking. They're interested. They don't know what to make of it, but they're interested. So I think that part is actually going along really well. The internal part of a community is the difficult part. And I think with that, one of the things I say is that everybody needs to be at the table. Nobody is excluded from the table, period. Because we need to honor all of the voices in our community. And in doing that, we need to learn to tolerate ourselves before we even ask for tolerance elsewhere.
Well, I would say actually one of the most important things we as pagans need to do, and just as humans need to do, is to start honoring diversity. I really still feel that we keep butting heads and we have these attitudes that our way is better, or that, you know, my view of the universe, of the craft, of the gods trumps other people's views. We have these ideas, different groups, we have these ideas that we have the right answer, you know, when it comes to the nature of the gods, for example. There's always this argument as to, well, what are the gods? Are they real? Or is it hard polytheism? Is it soft polytheism? And one of the things that I like to stress is that we don't know. You know, I prefer to approach the gods as a mystery because I don't know what the nature of the gods are. I know that they work for me. You know, when I connect with them, I get a sense of reverence. I do devotionals to them, but I couldn't possibly tell you what their ultimate nature is because it's beyond my human comprehension. So are they archetypes? Sure, maybe they are archetypes. Maybe they're part of my own psyche, but that doesn't negate the possibility that they are also these external universal beings. I think the one thing that kind of binds us all together as humans is that we don't know, that we don't have all the answers. And I'd like to see us in paganism stop treating our religions as if they're supposed to answer all of the questions, and start treating our religions more that they are supposed to teach us the right questions to ask.
Internally, we need to stop seeing each other as different. Externally, I think that we need to not be so afraid to say who we are.
I think right now paganism is in its adolescence in many ways, and adolescents tend to want to differentiate themselves from their family of origin. And I think the way that's manifesting in the community today is that we're focusing more on how we're different than how we're alike. And while I think it's important for us to be able to define ourselves and have good boundaries around that and understand that we aren't all the same, I think there's too much focus on what divides us than what unites us. And while it is a big tent, it is a huge umbrella, there are many different traditions and paths and religions that fall under this one heading, I think we're stronger when we're united. We need to be able to come together. Internally, we can have those dialogues, hopefully with as much respect for each other as possible. But I think when we are dealing with outside world, we have to have some degree of unification because we are still a very small group of people, and the only way we can have effect in the outside world is when we are united. So we need to choose connection, we need to choose unification. We can have our definition, but there's too much focus on what's different and not enough on what's the same.
Okay, so the first thing that I think really needs to happen in the community, internally in the community, is people got to stop fighting with each other. Learn to get along, learn to act like adults. We as both as a community and as a country need to grow up. first of all, not be afraid to be who we are. The Christian community is not afraid of who they are, and I think we need to stop being afraid of being pagans. The next thing they need to do is to learn to accept their own power. I kind of feel like most people are terrified of power, and taking hold of their own power will probably make them able to deal with the outside world a lot better.
It's the development of a culture, I think, is the most important part. I think, and also giving permission that pagan is a huge umbrella term, and within pagan there's going to be multiple different cultures, and we don't necessarily have to agree. If you look at other metaphysical spiritual cultures, let's say Buddhism, there's all sorts of different branches within Buddhism. There's certain things that tie Buddhists together, yet all the different schools and all the different thoughts have different symbol systems, different ways of doing things. I think pagans can really take a tip to that and really understand how can we see the different traditions within paganism and be able to give ourselves permission to express and grow and learn different things, yet at the same time develop our culture. I think we need to dig into the richness of our past, but not be afraid to develop what's coming in the future. I think just reconstructing and trying to look at things as they were isn't necessarily going to take us further, but I think just making things new and not looking at the past is going to cause us to topple over. So I think the mix between honoring the past, building the future, giving everybody permission to do what they need to do and still be united as pagans, united as magical people. But one brand of witchcraft doesn't have to be the same as Celtic Reconstructionism, doesn't have to be the same as Greek theurgy, and we can all still support each other in those different cultures. Well, I think the deeper our culture is and the more eloquent and effective we can speak about what we believe and how we believe and where we're coming from in an accurate way, the more serious we can be taken by an outer culture. I think sometimes people either just automatically make the assumption of how scary it is of what we do, and then you kind of have to get through that first layer. But once you get through that first layer, there's going to be more to talk about and what we think, and really kind of walking the talk about our theology around the earth and the ecology and the activism work. I think we're struggling with all those things right now in good ways, but I think it's still a struggle. So trying to figure out what does it mean to be a witch with a social consciousness, or what does it mean to be a pagan with a social consciousness? Because I think as people see us out in the world taking action based on our beliefs, the beliefs become more concrete for them. I remember having an interview with one of my teachers, Lori Cabot, getting an interview and talking about how a priest was really pressuring her because she's like, well, these witches, where's your hospitals? If you don't have hospitals, you're not a real religion. And I don't think we necessarily have to have hospitals, although maybe we should. After seeing how hospitals have been and taking care of my aging parents and their illnesses, I think, it'd be nice to see a pagan hospital that sees the values of paganism, that sees the values of holistic health, and maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be pagan, but I think our work in the world, the way we approach humanity, the way we approach the environment, the way we approach legality, the way we approach justice, I think really speaks to our vision of what paganism is, of what magical spirituality is. And if we can really come to the world in that way, I think we can be respected better, I think we can be understood better. Even in the disagreements, I think the disagreements at least will be deeper than you're scary at Halloween. I want to go beyond that. I've been having that conversation for 20 years, it's just like, we need to get that conversation, move over that hump and get to the next thing.
To appreciate our commonalities and not to search and not to beat each other up for our differences. Not to be a divisive community, but to be a supportive community. We don't all have to believe the same things. We don't all have to come from the same path. But we have enough in common with each other. We have a shared community. That sense that we do have that shared community, that is the most crucial. Our focus is how we live, not how other people perceive us.
Internally, we need to start understanding that not everyone's going to practice their spirituality the same way. And even if it's different than how you practice your spirituality, it's not wrong. Everyone's doing it the right way that is right for them. And we have to allow them to do that. We can't go around with the rule, you're doing it wrong, just because it's different than how you do it. I think we need to be more visible to the outside world and be visible in the sense of get rid of the stereotypes that people outside the pagan community think of the pagan community.
Yeah, with the outside world, I don't know. I would stay uninvolved with the outside world. I don't know. If they want to come here, they can. That's their thing.
So I often feel that I'm bridging the two worlds in a different way, the pagan community and the outside world, is that it's not just some things that need to be considered in the pagan community, but recognizing with the outside, that the language we're talking about is not all that different. My background is in psychotherapy and doing a lot of work with emotional healing, and what I've been finding more and more is that I'm sort of bringing some of the, what I call non-threateningly earth-based spirituality. And when I use that language, there's this openness to I guess the principles of paganism, recognizing that we're talking about how we're healing the earth, how we're healing ourselves, how we are moving in alignment with the energies within ourselves and the energies in nature, and to recognize that maybe terminology might be different, but underneath that the essence is very much the same. And I think that recognition will help to move us forward, not just in the pagan community, but in communities at large.
Realizing that what we're doing is important. I think that when we realize that what we each do as individuals and each do as groupings of community is important, with capital I, then we actually are empowered and strengthened to resist against the things that slow us down, both internally and externally. But what we do matters, and that's not something that we often claim. And I think that perhaps one of the reasons that some other religious or cultural movements succeed is that they're continuously reinforcing the idea that this matters on some cosmic scale. Well, I'm thinking that once upon a time, everybody lived in a village, and everyone knew your story, and everyone knew everything about you, and every member of the community was important. When we reclaim the idea of being important, and our work is important, then the rest follows. To really look at us as an emerging culture rather than an emerging religion or an emerging political movement. Certainly we are political people, certainly we are religious, at least some of us are, but ultimately it is the emergence of another strand of culture, which means folkways, art, music, a way of transmitting our beliefs and feelings about what the world should look like in the ideal conditions that don't exist. So it's really more about claiming the idea of creating culture as opposed to simply being a way of life or a path or a system of magic.
I think the big thing that paganism needs to do right now is to start getting along and start building more bonds and doing rituals together that are cross-traditional, and making more of an effort to step outside of its comfort zone just a little bit, so that we can show the rest of the world what we're actually doing.
I guess the next step forward would really depend on the group you're working with, but I work with the Irish gods, and to me it's very important to make my practices about the gods. I do magic, I do ritual work, but a lot of the focus of both of those things are my worship and my connection to deity. Magic is great, magic is part of my spirituality, but we really have to be able to draw a connection to the gods if we want to deepen our work. Dealing with the outside world, all you can do is just be a good representative of paganism or your brand of paganism in general. I don't think we're ever going to be mainstream, and honestly I don't want to be mainstream, because if we do get to that point, I think a lot of the color and vitality of our path is going to be gone at that point.
Well, the pagan community needs to step back and take a look at itself, and they need to figure out what direction as a community we want to go with. Currently, there's a lot of controversial subjects out there right now, and I think that we need to figure out how to be inclusive. Well, dealing with the outside world, I think that as America itself evolves, I think that more and more people are becoming acceptant of it as its own spiritual path. I don't think it's got all the it's emerging from all the negative connotations that it's had, and I think that it's something that's not so spooky to most people anymore, and and not so uncommon.
You know, really listen to the new people. That right there, I think, is what we sort of need to do. Because we really have this depth and breadth of knowledge which is happening, and we just really need to listen to the new ones and making sure that they're trained and moving forward. Outwardly, but if you mean by outwardly by working with people outside of the community, we just need to keep on generating awareness. You know, and that's the biggest thing. I would also throw in being more environmental. I mean, there's a lot of burnout from being environmental, you know, but we still need to keep on doing that. That's the core basis of who we are. We're connected to the land, we're connected to the people. We need to keep on keeping that connection, you know, and honoring that.
To be fair, I can really only speak of my own community, and at this particular moment in time, we have very few obstacles in our way. We've been extremely lucky. We've been embraced by our local community, by our local authorities, by government and law enforcement agencies even. They know who we are, what we are, and we've been embraced by that secular society that we're inherently a part of. So we've overcome what obstacles there were several years ago, and have reached a place where we're quite comfortable in our practice and in our role within society, which is quite defined now. I think ultimately it must start with the community itself. So if you consider my community, my Druid order back in Anglesey, we're a family. So everything starts with that family unit, if you like. So we focus on our own square mile and changing and shifting people's perspectives within that square mile. So rather than trying to take into consideration the entire world, which is just too big, we can't change the world, we can't cure the world of its sorrows, but we can choose to live with joy within our own square miles. So if people were to do that here, which I'm sure they are, by focusing on your little patch, you inspire people in the next patch along, and then the next one after that. One drop of water becomes a torrent. But if we think too widely, we can lose perspective. Consider what happens on your patch, your square mile, and from that point on you can create a Druid transmitted inspiration, a wave of inspiration. So start small, don't think too big, don't think too widely, otherwise one gets completely overwhelmed and bewildered. That's not a good place to be.
I feel that today's episode holds an important message for all of us, whether pagan or not. One of the things I truly love about being a pagan is that it is a culture of acceptance and tolerance. So the next time you find yourself commenting on that controversial thread, or you're embroiled in a heated debate, I hope that you'll take a moment to pause and reflect, and then move the conversation forward in a spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood. And while we should continue to try to challenge each other's ideas and opinions, it is my hope that we can do so with ever-increasing respect, tolerance, and love. Thank you for watching The Forbidden Frequency. If you'd like to learn more about any of the guests on the show today, you'll find their links in the description section below. And if you enjoy The Forbidden Frequency, please share on social media, like our Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe. Bird? It's Birdie Sanders.